Hi there. Now, a friend came up to me the other day and he gave me a bunch of old engines, and there was a couple of diesels, the rest were glow, and they kind of range from the late 50s to around the mid 80s, and some nice engines there, really nice. And this friend of mine, he'd had these engines for quite a while because they were his father's, and they obviously meant something to him, and he was quite keen to see them actually cleaned up and running again. And I felt quite touched that he was happy to let me have the engines, because he knew of my passion for old engines and how I love cleaning them up and getting them running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a few videos just showing the engines, how I clean them up, put them back together, getting them in the test stand and then running. Now, the first engine I'm going to look at is this lovely old OS Max 20, and I'll move the camera around, we'll have a closer look at it in a second and we'll take it apart. But this engine, it's a cross-flow design and it dates from the mid 70s, but it still should be a really good engine and run well. And I mean, it's absolutely caked in castor oil. You could look at it and think, well, it doesn't look as if it's been looked after, but actually I think it just looks like it's worked really hard and somebody's really enjoyed this engine and they've flown it a lot and had a lot of fun with it. So what better than to clean it up and to give it new life and get it running again. And I've got a lovely project to put this in. So I'll move the camera around now and we'll have a look at it, and then we'll start to get it down to the bare pieces and see about cleaning it up. Well, here we go, lovely old OS Max 20, and as you can see, as I said, it's absolutely caked in castor oil. You see it's got OS on the carb, it's all original, it's got the original OS silencer by the look of it, and we've got a strap-on exhaust. So the first thing I'm going to do is start to dismantle this. I'm going to take the silencer off, the carb out, the plug, the head and the back plate, and we'll have a look and see what kind of condition it's in. I'm going to be really careful taking out the screws, because it'd be quite nice to put these screws back in rather than chewing them up. So I'll get on and start to take this apart now. Right, well, I've now got this stripped down a fair way, got the back plate off, and actually it looks really nice and clean inside. This, I didn't say earlier, but I think this is plain bearings. I don't think there's any ball races in this, which is good because it's easier to do, and there's a little bit of wear, but I don't think there's a lot. I'm sure it'll be fine. Now, the next thing we're going to do, it looks, just before I say that, it looks like it's a ringed piston in there. I don't know whether we can see in on that, maybe a bit difficult to see, but first thing I want to do is take the liner out. So I'm going to use a stick or a stirrer and just put that into the exhaust port on top of the piston, and I'm just going to turn this. There we go, and that's come up nice and freely. You can see it's just pushed the top of that up, and hopefully now we can get a hold of that and pull it out. Easier said than done. Might have to just warm it up a little bit. Oh no, it's turning. I've just pushed it back down, so I'll put that in again and push it back up, and I think I just need to work it a little bit. If not, a little bit of heat will help. Yeah, it's coming loose now. Surprising how loose some of the bits are in this. Now I want to be careful when I take it out to make sure, just trying to find a finger that fits in there, that's to make sure I get it back in the right way. There we go. So the exhaust port, okay, we've got boost port transfer ports here, or at least inlet ports here, so we know what side that goes on. So that is on the inlet side, those two holes. Easy done. Now let's see if we can get the piston out, piston out. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a scratch on the back of this conrod, so we know which way round it goes. And it's interesting, it's always interesting to see whether there is a scratch on there already, which suggests somebody's had it apart, and there isn't on this one. So I know there's no, there isn't a ring on this. It was just carbon around the top. I'll just have a look with the magnifying glass. Oh, maybe there is a Dykes. No, I don't think there is, but I'll have a closer look at that in a minute. I don't think it is. I think it's just carbon. Now what I need to do is get a puller, and I'm just going to take that off, unless it will come without. Oh no, it's come off, that's fine. Wasn't sure whether I'd need a puller to pull off the prop driver, so let's just put that on. Take off this nut if I can. And the crankshaft should just pull out. There seems very little wear on that actually, that seems quite nice. And we can see the bronze bush that goes through the crankcase. So now these are down to their constituent components, or the individual components. So I'm going to go and get my ultrasonic cleaner, and we'll get this. I'm not going to do the carb at the moment, I'm going to wait, do that, I'll do the engine first. So I'll get the ultrasonic cleaner, get that set up, and we'll get these dropped in and cleaned up. It's going to take some doing. Right, well, I've now got my ultrasonic cleaner with warm water in it, and I've got some of this Sea Clean 2, which I've used before, and it's great with aluminium. I don't use it on the ferrous items because it kind of reacts with them. It's not very good for that. But the aluminium, it's ideal. But I will be keeping a close eye on it, and I'm going to put it in for 20 minutes at first, and I will be all the time checking that everything's okay. So let's switch it on, and I suspect this is going to take quite a bit of cleaning to get off this castor oil. Just a little bit more water in that, just to cover the lugs on the crankcase. Yeah, that's all I'm going to put in for now. So we'll come back and see how we get on with that. Right, well now this has just stopped, and these have been in for 20 minutes, the full cycle, and we'll have a look at what they're like. You can see that is starting to clean up, and it looks like the castor has gone to a bit of a goo. So what I think I might do is just take this into my utility room and just give these a little bit of a scrub with a toothbrush and some washing up liquid, and then I'll probably come back, change the water and give them another cycle. But I'll see if I can get some of the bulk off just with a toothbrush between the fins, both on that and on this head. Need to be a little bit careful because one of these is just bent slightly. There we go, that one's just bent slightly, and if I catch it it'll break. If I try to straighten it it'll break, so the best thing is just to leave it. So I'm going to try and scrub these now, and we'll come back and have a look once I've done that. Right, well, I've just been scrubbing these with a toothbrush and actually cleaned the crankcase up quite nicely, and then as soon as I put the toothbrush in between the fins, it just totally clogged up with oil and started to smear oil back on the crankcase where I'd put it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these back in the ultrasonic cleaner and leave them another good 20 minutes, and I think I'll take the rest of what's in here out and put some fresh water in. Right, well, I've got the fresh water in. I'll put in my cleaner, doesn't need much, and we'll get these pieces back in for another 20 minutes, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was another 20 minutes after that. But the solution doesn't do any harm, so the longer we leave it, the cleaner it will be. But another 20 minutes and then we'll come back and have a look at that. And we'll put the heater on so it's warming up. There we go. Just got the crankcase out of the cleaner after it's been in for another 20 minutes. So it's been 40 minutes now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around with a cocktail stick and pick out a lot of the grease that's, or the oil, congealed oil that's between the fins. And once I've done that, it should look a lot better. I mean, look at this coming out. You can see the dirt coming out there from between those fins. I mean, I could just stick the crankcase in for another 40 minutes and then another 40 minutes, but if I can get a lot of this fat oil, out of the fins with this stick, it'll clean up a lot better. Actually, this is coming out really nicely with this cocktail stick. Oops, broke my stick. And it's not going to do any damage. Right, I've now got the engine lovely and clean, and all the gunge has gone from between the fins. Same with the muffler silencer, all the gunge has gone from between the fins, and same with the head. Crankcase, just a very light polishing on the bearing surface there. It was just a little bit marked, so that's just cleaned up. Haven't touched the connecting rod, cleaned up all the screws and everything. Now, just a word on the cylinder liner and piston. It's a steel cylinder liner, and I've cleaned up the outside just where there's bits of carbon, but I haven't touched the inside of the cylinder. Don't want to touch that because I don't want to affect the compression, or potentially affect the compression. And it's lovely and smooth, and I see no reason to do anything to it. Similarly, the piston, it's a cast iron piston, and it isn't ringed. I mean, cast iron pistons weren't, and as far as I know, and that around the top is a line of carbon. It just looked like a Dykes piston ring when it was covered in muck, but it's clearly not now. I haven't touched that carbon around the outside. I haven't cleaned around the outside of the piston at all. I didn't want to potentially affect the compression, and if I start cleaning the outside of that and the cylinder, it could have a detrimental effect on the compression. What I have done is just cleaned up the top of the piston a little bit where there was really thick encrusted carbon, which will, I'm sure, have affected the airflow, the air transfer of gases coming in and gases leaving the cylinder. So I haven't got that perfect because I didn't want to go too mad, but I've just cleaned off the thick encrusted carbon. Now I'm going to start building that up soon, but I want to get the carburettor done first, and I'm just going to clean this up exactly the same way as I did the engine, although actually with the aluminium body I might try and just scrub that in a little bit of methanol and see if it will clean that way rather than putting it in the ultrasonic cleaner. The barrel on this is totally seized, it won't move at all, so rather than forcing it, a little bit of heat is needed and a little bit of soaking in perhaps some methanol. The high-speed needle, there's a clip here, a spring clip, which stops the vibration turning the needle. That's missing. It looks like it's been broken because it looks like the end of it, or the remains of it, is around there. Now I might try a little bit of silicone tube as a temporary measure over that, we'll see. Or I've got a spring clip here which may fit, it's a little bit too big to be honest, but it may be a temporary measure. This is from an Irvine carb. But we'll get this stripped down anyway and see how it goes. Oh, and I've just ordered some O-rings between the carb and the crankcase because there wasn't one when I took it apart. And even if there was, it probably needed changing anyway. So I'm going to start stripping this down now. Right, well, we've got everything cleaned up now. We've got the carb done. I just soaked the carb in a bit of methanol and then scrubbed it with a toothbrush, and that's come up lovely, and blown it out with a bit of compressed air. Well, we've now got the engine completely stripped, everything nice and clean and ready to put back together. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this video to a close, and I'm going to have the reassembly as part of another video. I'm just very mindful of how long these videos go, and if I end up rebuilding it in this one, it's going to end up quite a long video, so I'm going to split them up a little bit. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you found it useful, and please come back and see how we get on in building up this lovely OS Max 20.